G'day, I'm Yuki-san Dev, and in part 34 of the series Unity for the Absolute Beginner, we are continuing on with our second game and adding a power-up. Alrighty, so we are continuing on with adding some more things to our Game 2. Today we will add a power-up to the game. We will do a shield, but of course after you get the idea you could make a whole bunch of different power-ups. You could have double fire, increase the fire rate, have a fire bomb, etc, etc. So let's get into it. Okay, so I'm opening up the project from where we left off in the previous video. Alright, well the best place to start I guess would be a new prefab that we can spawn in for the player to pick up. If you have been following the Minecraft Invaders series, then you will already have the necessary files that you need. So open up your imported folder in the project and navigate to GP VFX Potions Pack, and then 3D Prefabs, and then grab the GP VFX Potion C and drag it up into your hierarchy. And now back down in the project inside your GP VFX Potions Pack, navigate to the VFX and VFX Prefabs, and then GP VFX Magic Prefabs, and grab the GP VFX Entangle and drag that into your Potion C in the hierarchy. And now rename the GP VFX Potion C to Potion Shield. And let's give it a tag and name it Powerup and assign it to the potion. Alright, now let's edit this a little. So firstly, let's size it down. So lock X, Y, and Z in the transform and scale it to 0.2. And now expand the entangle system and disable the glass shards and the potion C effects. And now click back up on the GP VFX Entangle and disable the renderer. And now click on the Magic Burst and lock its X, Y, and Z and scale it down to 0.1. And turn on looping. Alright, and then let's just play this real quick. Yep, looks good. Okay, now we need to add some components to this. So click back up on the Potion Shield and let's add a component. And we'll add a rigid body. And make sure that gravity is off. And let's also add a sphere collider. And enable is trigger. And just double check that the collider is properly surrounding the sphere. You're probably going to have to enlarge the collider a little. And now finally we need a script for it. So create a new C# script and name it something like Powerups. And drag it onto the Potion Shield. Okay, we are ready to save our prefabs. So drag the Potion Shield into your prefabs folder and create an original prefab. And now we can delete it from the scene. Alrighty, so now we need to make it move, etc. So let's get into the Powerup script. Alright, now we don't need too much in here since the other game scripts will handle all the collisions. So all we need to do in here is movement and rotation. So let's start with some declarations. We will need a force to push the potion down. So let's do serialized field, private, float, force equals 1.5 F. And we will need a boundary for the potion to destroy itself at the bottom of the screen. I'm going to use the same Y value as the enemy script did. So private, float, boundary Y equals minus 4.2 F. And then we're going to need a rigid body to rotate the potion. So private, rigid body, Powerup RB. Okay, and now in start, let's get the rigid body with Powerup RB equals get component rigid body. And we'll push the power up down the screen with powerup rb dot add force vector2 dot down times force and the force mode impulse, just to give it a short sharp push. And finally we'll rotate it with powerup rb dot add torque 1, 20, 20. And of course you could change those numbers if you wanted it to rotate faster. Okay, and in our update method, we just want to destroy the power up if it goes off the screen. So let's just do if transform dot position dot y is less than boundary y, then destroy the game object. All right, so the script is pretty much done. So let's save it. All right, now let's stay in the gameplay scene this time and click run. So you'll notice that the game will halt because of an error. It's erroring because the game is looking for our persistent data, which isn't there yet. So we can actually continue running the game just by clicking the pause button. And now drag one of the potion shield prefabs into the scene just to make sure it moves. Cool. Alright, well the next step might be to get this thing spawning in. So the first thing to do is add this prefab to the enemy pool in each wave. So click on the spawner object and drag a potion prefab into each wave that you have. Now this is going to create an issue that the potion will be spawning in an awful lot. It's supposed to be kind of rare, right? In my first wave here it has a 1 in 3 chance of spawning, which is ridiculous. So I'm going to show you one solution of a whole bunch. In a future tidy up video, I will show a better way of doing percentage chance spawns, but it involves adding another class to our already nested class, and I'm just trying to keep things simple for now. So let's just open up the spawner script. Alright, so in here we are going to need a Boolean declaration for our new code. So let's do private bool spawn equals true. Okay, now if we jump down the script into our IEnumerator spawn waves. So in the first while loop, our script is simply choosing at random an enemy from the pool. So we just need to make some changes here. So firstly, rem out the 2 lines of code in our while loop and create a new line or 2 above. This is just to save confusion because we're going to rewrite it. Okay, so we still need to choose a random number between 0 and the count of the enemy list. So let's do int enemy index equals random dot range 0, wave, and this is from wave number dot enemy length. That's basically this snippet of code right here. And now that we have a number, we can assign another local variable to select the enemy with the chosen index with GameObject chosen enemy equals wave number dot enemy and the enemy index. And now that we have the chosen enemy for this loop, let's also store its name with string object name equals chosen enemy dot name. Alright, so now we have all we need to create some conditions. So let's put some new rules in here for if it's the shield potion. So let's do if object name equals potion shield, and just make sure you spell that right. Now in the curlies, we first want to know if the player already has a shield active. The game manager will be looking after that kind of stuff. So let's minimize this script and open up the game manager script real quick. And let's up in here in the declarations, just slap a Boolean in here. Public bool shield active equals false. And then just save that, and let's get back to the spawner script. Alright, so let's carry on in here with if game manager script dot shield active and then debug dot log already have shield and spawn equals false. I just thought I'd throw in a few debug statements in here so that later in the console you can follow what's going on. And now let's do else And in between the curlies, int, we'll just call it rand, equals random.range between 0 and 10. And then if rand equals 1, and we'll do another debug, debug.log, spawning shield, spawn equals true. And then else, debug.log, position shield chance missed, and spawn equals false. So this while loop is now saying if the chosen enemy is a potion, then firstly, if the player already has a shield, then set spawn to false and skip the rest of the code underneath and carry on. Then if the player doesn't have a potion, choose a random number between 0 and 9. And if the number just happens to be a 1, then we're good to spawn a potion. So set spawn to true and skip the rest of the code and carry on. And then otherwise, if the number wasn't a 1, then set spawn to false and skip through. And of course at the top, if the object name is not a potion, then just skip this altogether and move on. So we've basically just created another chance layer for the potion shield to be spawned. This is a 1 in 10 chance. If you wanted to make more chance of spawning, then you would decrease the number 10 to less, or make it more for less chance. Alright, now continuing on to where this will all skip to next. If spawn, so this is if spawn is true, and in between the curlies, instantiate chosen enemy, comma, random spawn location, that's that function that we made earlier, transform.rotation. And then yield return new, wait for seconds, wave number dot spawn rate. So if spawn is true, then spawn in whatever enemy or potion as we normally did before. And then outside of that condition, finally set spawn to true. And you can either keep those two rimmed lines there or delete them, doesn't really matter. All right, so let's save this and run. And if you keep an eye on the console, you will see the debug outputs to see what's going inside that code. And yep, just like I mentioned earlier, just increase or decrease the random code in the script if you want to change the chances of getting the potion. I think at this point, I'm going to jump back into the spawner script and change the chance for a potion spawn. Otherwise, I'll be here all day waiting for potions to spawn. I'm just going to change mine to 3. Alright, so the potion is spawning, so the next step would be picking it up. Let's do that with the player, so open the player script. And now let's navigate down to our on trigger enter. Right, so the code that's in here can stay, but we'll just add some new stuff above to handle what happens if the player collides with a power-up. So drop a few lines above the existing code and let's put in some conditions. First, let's get and store the tag name of what we're colliding with. So string tag name equals other.tag. And then let's do if tag name equals powerup. That's the tag that we gave it in the prefab. And in between the curlies, we want to destroy the powerup. So destroy other game object. And then, well, we might as well set up a case system in here so that down the track you can add more power-ups and they can just follow their case. So first we need to know the name of the power-up with string power-up equals other.name. And now let's set up a case system. So switch power-up. And in the curlies, we'll do our first case. So case potion shield clone, because that's what it's going to be called when it's instantiated into the game. It will have the clone next to it. And we're picking this up and activating the shield so we can set that boolean we made in the game manager script to true with game manager script dot shield active equals true. And now we're going to need some kind of countdown timer because we aren't going to have the shield forever. So let's use a coroutine for that. So let's do start coroutine shield countdown. and then a break to end the case. And of course our shield countdown is going to have a red line underneath it because we haven't created it yet. We will do that in a minute. Okay, now outside our if group, let's do else if game manager script dot shield active and tag name equals enemy bullet or tag name equals enemy. And in those curlies, we're just going to do the one line. If tag name equals enemy bullet, destroy other .game object. So we're just saying here that if we collide with a bullet while the shield is active, then destroy the bullet. We don't have much else in here because the enemy script will handle that. Now I must be honest here, if I had thought this game through before making it, then this would be laid out very differently and it would be a lot easier to follow. And in the future tidy up video, I'll cover that. Alright, now we just encase the code below in an else statement. And that should about do it. So now we need to make that I enumerator to handle the countdown timer. So the shield duration should probably be a variable, so you can set that up in the inspector. So let's put that in the game manager script real quick. So public int shield duration, and save that. And back into our player script. So let's do I enumerator shield countdown. And in the curlies, for int_i equals game manager script dot shield duration, and while I is greater than 0, and I minus minus. And in those curlies, yield return new, wait for seconds, 1. And then outside the for loop, game manager script dot shield active equals false. So we're simply looping through the shield duration until done and then setting the shield back to false. Alright, let's save this one. And click on the game manager object and set your shield duration. I'm going to go with 60 just for now so that I can make sure this is working. And with the game manager object still selected, run the game. And when a power-up spawns in, keep an eye on the shield active checkbox. And once you've picked up one, you should be able to collide with an enemy bullet and the enemy bullet will be destroyed. Of course, we're not going to collide with enemies because we have not scripted that in yet. Also, while you have a power-up, you should have no other power-up spawning. And you will notice in your console output that message already have shield. And as soon as the shield is set to false again, then you have a chance to get another one. Alright, well, the enemy needs to know what to do if it collides with the player when the shield is active, so let's get into the enemy script. Okay, so there's not a lot we need to do in here at all. Let's navigate down to our on trigger enter. So when we wrote the script here, the only thing that could hurt the enemy was a player bullet. Well, now a shielded player can hurt it too, so let's script that in. So in our if compare tag line, let's add a shielded player with or other.compare tag player and game manager script dot shield active. Then before we increase the hit count, let's set a temporary bool if it's a bullet or not with bool is bullet equals other dot compare tag player bullet. So that'll return true if it finds that that's bullet. And now let's add to our if the enemy got hit enough times to kill it if with or game manager script dot shield active. So now if an enemy hits a shielded player, it will be killed instantly, no matter how many hits it's supposed to take to kill it. And now finally let's change our destroy bullet line to if is bullet destroy other dot game object. So if it's a player bullet, then destroy it. So when the shielded player collides with the enemy, the player won't be destroyed. And that's pretty much it. So let's save this and run. And if we pick up a shield, and now while we are shielded, we bang into an enemy, boom, enemy destroyed. Cool. Alright, so there's two more things left to do. I think one, we need to see the countdown in the GUI so that we know how much time we have the shield for. And secondly, we need to have some kind of particle effect while the shield's enabled. So we'll do the countdown first. So let's jump into our Game Manager canvas. And let's create a new empty and call it Powerups. And we will need a counter display, so let's just copy the score display in here. And then paste it as a child object of Powerups. And rename it Countdown. And set its X and Y position to 0. Alright, and let's put an image in there too, so you can grab this image from my GitHub link in the description or use any image you might have. So drag the image into your images folder. Again, it's been used in the GUI, so we need to change it. So click on it and change the texture type to Sprite 2D and UI and click Apply. And now right click on Powerups in the hierarchy and create a UI image and name it Shield. And then change its source image to the shield image that we just created. And let's also halve its size, width and height. And then finally position it up above the counter in the scene. And then position the whole Powerups container where you would like the display to be. Okay, and now disable both the countdown and the shield objects. Cool, so we are ready to go with some scripting. Now the player is going to handle the enabling and updating of these GUI items, but I thought I'd just throw something a little extra in here. So the player is a prefab, and you will notice that all the references in it and any other object are bits and pieces from the project window. That's because it can't actually reference anything in the scene until it's in the scene. That kind of makes sense if you use the player in a different scene where the object doesn't exist. So the usual way is to find the scene or GUI objects. However, once your game starts getting bigger, you might start to have way too many find this and find that lines in your code. So what you could do is create an object in the scene that acts as a kind of a hub for all the references that you need. After we've done this one, then you could actually jump around the scripts that we've made so far and have them all refer to the hub rather than having to find everything all the time. It's just another option, and also, as I've mentioned before, that using find does eventually affect performance, so in the long run it would help. Right, so with that said, let's create a hub to hold the reference for the new Powerup GUI. So let's create a new empty in the hierarchy and name it Reference Hub. And now create a script with the same name. And drag it onto the Reference Hub object. And open the script. Alright, and let's delete the start and update methods. And let's make some declarations here. So first, well, we'll make this a static instance so everything can access it with public static reference hub instance. And let's make the references. Since this is static, we'd better protect it with get and set. If you need to refresh your memory on get and set, then video part 18 will be the one to watch. So let's do a couple of hidden variables for the references. Serialize field, private, game object, Powerup shield, and serialize field, private, game object, Powerup countdown. And then the public ones with public, game object, Powerup countdown. And then we're going to have a get, and it will return the hidden one, which is the underscore Powerups countdown. And then public, game object, Powerup shield, and that will return Powerup shield with the underscore. So now when Powerup countdown or Powerup shield is requested, then their true hidden value will be returned. Okay, and now let's do an awake method. So public void awake, and inside that instance equals this. All right, that should do the trick. So let's save this. And now if you click on the reference hub in the hierarchy, we can now assign those two GUI objects to the empty object fields. So shield into shield and countdown into countdown. Cool. All right, now let's open up our player script. Alrighty, so we need a few declarations in here. Firstly, our references to the shield and the countdown GUI items with private, game object, power up shield, and we'll put the power up countdown on the same line. So that's two objects there. And we'll also need a reference to the text of the countdown object so that we can change the numbers. So private, text mesh pro GUI, power up countdown text. Okie doke. And now in start, let's retrieve these using our new reference hub rather than having to find them each time. So power up countdown equals reference hub dot instance power up countdown. And then power up countdown text equals power up countdown, which we just retrieved, dot get component text mesh pro GUI. And then finally power up shield equals reference hub dot instance power up shield. All right, and now let's navigate down to our countdown enumerator. And before the loop starts, let's enable the displays with power up countdown dot set active true and power up shield dot set active true. And then inside the loop, we want to update the timer number. So power up countdown text dot set text, and you can do a couple of speech marks plus I, just makes it a string. And then finally, after the loop exits, the timer's run out, so we disable the two displays with power up countdown dot set active false and power up shield dot set active false. Alrighty, I think we're ready to test this out, so let's save this. And run. And we'll pick up a potion. And boom, there is our countdown timer letting us know how long we have the shield for, and a little graphic to go with it. Alright, so there's one thing left to do now, which is to give the player a particle effect when the shield is enabled. You could use any particle effect you like here. I do have one here, but it will take a fair while to go through each setting of it. So I've packaged it up and it is available on my GitHub link. So you can download it. And while your project is open, just double click the package and it will install itself. And you can grab the force field folder and drag it into your imported folder. And the prefab itself should now already be in your prefabs folder. So double click your player prefab in the project to edit the player prefab. And then drag the shield ring into the player. Then click on the shield ring, lock X, Y, and Z of scale and scale it up to 1. Then you can jump out of edit mode. Drag a player prefab into the hierarchy and drop it down and click on the shield ring and you should see the effect. Cool. Okay, now you can delete the player from the hierarchy and let's script in the effect to play when the player has the shield active. So let's open the player script again. Alrighty, so we're going to need a reference to that shield ring object, so we can just slot it in with the other game objects here. We'll just call it shield ring. Then in start, let's grab it with shield ring equals game object dot find shield ring. That's a pretty quick find because it's a child object of the player. And then make sure it's not active with shield ring dot set active false. And then if we jump back down to our countdown enumerator again, and where we can activate the displays, we can add in shield ring set active true, and then when the shield expires we can do shield ring set active false, and we are done here. So let's save this and run. And if we pick up a shield, and boom, there is our particle effect. Cool. Alright, we're done with our first power up. Now, just one thing to note, back in our player script, in our countdown enumerator, we put shield specific stuff in there, but this countdown could be used for all other power-ups as well. You would just have to move all these shield specific bits up into the case in the on-trigger enter function. Perhaps I'll make another power-up in the future so that you can see what I mean. Or challenge yourself and try to figure it out. As always, I'm around if you have any questions. Now, I'm not sure what the next video will be. I was thinking to add some options in the menu for gameplay, or maybe just start tidying the scripts up a little because they're kind of getting a little messy. So whichever it is, I hope to see you in the next video.